Hey. And welcome to the live show discussion for The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I will be the conductor of this crazy train, Violet of the channel Writing Violet. I have a great panel of co-hosts with me today, all return guests on the train. As always, I like to have my guests, when they introduce themselves and promote their channel, just say a quick thing about their experience with the book, when they heard of it or their first time reading or reread. For me, I think actually I had heard about this book, The Graveyard Book, but I think I mixed it up with one of Neil Gaiman's other books, like M is for Magic, which I think is like a short story collection. So I thought for the longest time The Graveyard Book was like just a collection of like graveyard stories, not like a full-length novel.
That's fair.
That's fair. Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah, so that was, and they both have blue covers, so I think that's what threw me off as well. So I actually first read the book this May for May Chaos Reign, because that was Danny's prompt to read a Neil Gaiman book. So then I reread it this month. So the first time I read it as the Gaiman only audiobook version, and this time the full cast. So that was my experience. Not Danny, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm not Danny. Hi, I'm Anne. I read the Graveyard Book last year when I got my puppy as an audiobook in the Neil Gaiman version, and I think it might have been the first one that I listened to, like my first Neil Gaiman ever. But like he'd been around, like I've had his books on my I want to buy those books eventually, but I'm poor. And I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 5 stars when I listened to it, and I just reread it, and I also still cried. So it's doing its thing, I guess.
I will have to be right back. My mom just got here. Why?
Good job,
Casey?
Mom. All right, well, I'll go next. What were you saying? Oh, I'm Casey. I've read it this month, and this is my first introduction to, I'm looking on my Goodreads trying to figure out what was my first one. My first introduction was American Gods.
Oh gosh.
That's
different.
That's a way to start.
Why did I start with American
So this was your
Gods?
first time reading The Graveyard Book?
Yeah, so this is my first time reading The Graveyard Book. So I read it on, I did the Gaiman only audio first, and then after that, Sam put it in my head as a great idea to just read both audio versions. And so I requested it from my library, and it came in last night, and I was like, dope, I'm reading this tomorrow. And so I had it on, I think, like 2 times speed, and at one point cranked it up to almost like 3 times speed trying to get through it. I'm like, I'm gonna get through this book. But at first, earlier in the day it was a little slower, so I could enjoy it and like want to like take it in.
Yeah.
And I definitely, it was nice to see like the difference in the narration, and like how I picked up different things that I didn't pick up before, like in the second time I listened to it. And I don't know if it was like the different narration and the different like voices and whatnot, but yeah, I've done Gaiman all on audio. I've never actually read his books physically, so I've always had Gaiman's lovely voice in my ears, and that's all. I won't read his books any other way. I love them.
Yeah,
Michael?
I mean, I think he does have a pretty lovely voice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've definitely heard it around. But yeah, hi, I'm Michael, and I have an AuthorTube channel, etc. So my experience is really nothing at all, except for just reading the book word for word just now. Mostly
you have a
within the
nice copy too. Do you have like the holographic Newbery on it?
I think so.
Like
Yeah.
it,
Oh, I love it. I'm kind of jealous.
But yeah, I literally just finished it, maybe like a shade over a half an hour ago.
Okay, this is great. So we have some like people having it really fresh in their head.
Maybe too fresh, right? Cutting it a
That's
bit
true.
too
Sometimes
close.
distance helps, but
Hashtag too fresh or something. But yeah, basically, like the entire book word for word, and yet nothing else, like no knowledge of like kind of like the backstory of it or the context of it or anything like that. But yeah, that's kind of where I am, and that's kind of me. And maybe Sam, we could pass it back to you now.
Oh yeah, we missed Sam's introduction.
Hold on, pause. Sam, you just graced us with your presence in the Discord. Thank you.
You're welcome.
These notes are fantastic.
If you would like
Okay.
any of my notes for any of the other ones that I have done, I love sharing my Milo note board. I hold
Oh
them
my
out.
gosh. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Sam. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm always content to have praise heaped upon me. I also, it makes me feel better because, so I knew that my mom was picking up my kids from school today so I could be here on time. I forgot that she had said that she wasn't going to bother bringing her house key. So that's why I had to go open the door. She brought me my children. So I was like, oh, that's why. Yes, thank you for your folder. Go on now. But hi. Yes, this was the first time I read a Neil Gaiman book. Though it's kind of funny. I knew about Neil Gaiman, the comic writer, since I was a teenager. And then I also knew there was a novelist, Neil Gaiman, whose work I was not interested in at all. I did not realize these were the same man until this year, actually. I was like, wait a second. It was because Sandman came out. And I knew Sandman was a comic. And they're like, yeah, Neil Gaiman's Sandman. And I'm like, does he just happen to have a novel with this? Wait a second. And then my brain was like, let us
It finally
connect some
clicked.
dots. And I'm like, this is the same man. And I was mind blown. And my husband was like, this entire time that we've had discussions about Neil Gaiman, you didn't know? And I'm like, I did not. We've watched Good Omens. We have plans to watch Sandman. And I had no idea. But this was my first time reading a Neil Gaiman book. So
Okay, so we have a pretty like good mix. I feel like on the panel today.
Yes,
I'd say so.
Yes.
Oh, hi there.
Okay, let's also say hi to our friends in the chat. We have
Hola,
a
friends.
Danny, who is, we know, Neil Gaiman stan. Michael, you were getting blamed for starting 1 minute late. Oh, we have an Anna Robbins.
Hi, Anna.
We have a cool gamer.
Hi, cool gamer.
Because you're here in spirit, Danny. The train sound scared my kitty so bad she did not like that. Yeah, I'm thinking about changing the intro.
Oh.
This was my first time I've read the Graveyard Book in about a decade, probably like the third or fourth time ever. And I have Michael Michael, I have the same copy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun researching the covers for the cover war this time around.
Oh.
At this point, I'm going to go ahead and just put up the spoiler banner so everybody watching has been warned. And just because we kind of had started the topic of just talking about Neil Gaiman in general, I know I kind of mentioned this to you guys, that I wanted to talk about like Neil Gaiman, the idea of him kind of being like a celebrity author. Like, I feel like there are a few writers who sort of almost leave the space of just bookish and literary circles and like become almost household names. And I feel like Neil Gaiman has kind of crossed that threshold.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because he's had so many of his works adapted. So I know, like, what am I trying to say here?
I know more about Neil Gaiman than I do anything he's written.
That says something.
I've read two other of his books and seen a few of the different TV adaptations. I think the first time like he actually came on my radar was when the Coraline movie came out.
Oh yeah, right. There's a movie.
Like that was such a big movie. And I actually didn't see the movie Coraline, but it was my first Gaiman book that I read, and I read it last year during Jessica's Summer Scare Readathon. And the reason I read Coraline was because I had watched an interview with V. Schwab and Neil Gaiman it was for promo for Addie LaRue's release. And one of the questions was like, talking about that was her book baby, and she had asked Neil, like, what's like one of your book babies, and he said my children's books are my favorites of everything I've written, and Coraline has a really soft spot in my heart. That's why I chose to read it. I was like, okay,
I have a fun story about the editor in Coraline when you're done.
Interesting.
Give us the
the editor for Coraline read the manuscript to her daughter to make sure that it wasn't too scary for kids in that age group. So, and her daughter loved it and everything, so they released it. Well, her daughter years later confessed that she was terrified, but she didn't want to tell her that because she wanted to know the end of the story.
No.
Oh no!
Oh no!
So,
but it makes
but, like,
complete sense.
Yeah, but you know, like I assume that like good terrified, because obviously she didn't want to stop, and I assume there were no related nightmares, or her mom would have picked up on her terror. So
Yeah.
Have any of you guys read Coraline or seen the film?
Yes, I listened to the audiobook after the Graveyard book, and I really enjoyed it, though it was also very scary, especially the rats. What?
Yeah, well, I love rats, so that was my favorite part. But I definitely think as his kind of two middle grade, like big, like successes, that you can kind of compare the two in a way. Or
Yeah.
I feel like there's definitely some comparisons to be made. And ironically, the other Neil Gaiman book I read was The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I read that just this summer while I was home in the US on audiobook.
Hey, Brooke.
And I went in not knowing really much about it, just like, oh, it was about like this guy going home back to his hometown for a funeral, like looking back on his life. And that was the only setup I got. But most of that story is told through a flashback of him as a child. So it also kind of has that almost like middle grade childhood feel, even though it's an adult novel. Because it only starts with that adult framework and ends with the adult framework, but the vast majority is like him as a child.
Yeah.
And there's actually a connection between the two books, which I realized on the reread, since I had read Ocean at the End of the Lane this summer, and then just reread the Graveyard book now, the Liza Hemstock, the character. I was like, wait a minute, the family in Ocean at the End of the Lane is the Hemstocks. And then I looked,
I love
that's
that.
pretty cool.
and then I looked at Neil Gaiman said, oh yeah, from the same family. And I was like, and then I realized there's also a family in the graveyard, or a guy in the graveyard with the last name Jones, and isn't it Coraline Jones? And I was like, is this the Neil Gaiman extended universe? Like,
Fun!
It may be like where all of his characters go to live and die. Like that's just where they get buried.
yeah, I thought it was very.
And that's their graveyard. That's
I was
cool.
just happy that I found an Easter egg on my own, and then it
That's
saw it confirmed
cool.
online.
That's cool though.
That's awesome.
And it's also kind of like the dream to be the writer, to write enough books that you can do cool
Yeah.
things like that, and then your readers
reference
can pick
yourself.
up on them and have fun with them.
Yeah. Because Brandon Sanderson, he has like a little Easter egg kind of thing, same thing too. Supposedly, I haven't read enough of his books yet, so I don't know which character. But there's, I think, a more kind of a minor character in like his Mistborn books that appear in like his other like Stormlight Archive series and all of that. But and so my brother's read all of them, so he told me, he's like, well, he has little Easter eggs, but he won't
Yeah,
tell me
I
who.
really love that kind of stuff. Have you guys read any other Gaiman's books or seen any of the adaptations? Because there is quite a few
yeah.
adaptations.
I've seen
seen-
Good Omens and about halfway through Sandman.
Okay.
I've seen Good Omens and American Gods.
I haven't seen anything, but I've read American Gods, Norse mythology, this book obviously, and Stardust.
Okay. And Michael, you said it was like your first book, but did you see any of his shows or adaptations?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I actually, like I said, I haven't seen the movie Coraline. I've just like heard about it. Like, I saw like the first 2 minutes of Stardust and I fell asleep because I had jet lag.
What a great track record.
No, it was like I just
Yep.
got off the plane and my family's like, oh, we'll just put on a movie. And
It's
so,
like, okay, that nap time.
yeah. And I saw Good Omens, the first couple episodes of American Gods, but I never finished the series. And I
Oh,
binged
don't.
Sandman in like one day. Like Sandman was really, really good.
American
So-
Gods, I don't know what I was thinking, being my first introduction to Gaiman.
Questionable.
It was, and I barely came. I was questioning whether or not I was going to come back. I'm
Fair.
glad I did because I like Gaiman now. I understand like his writing more now.
Yeah.
But after reading American Gods, I was lost a lot of the
I'm
time.
sorry. Steak's coming.
I love that. I do like that. That's really great. Steve says he loves
Well,
Stardust.
yeah,
I had
Stardust
planned
was really
to
good. The
read
book is good.
Stardust for May Chaos Reign, and like I just wasn't feeling the vibe, and I was like in just a spooky vibe. That's why I ended up reading it back in May, even though I knew it was going to be the book club pick this month. Okay, so I think I can
So
move
it's
on
not to
from this
disappoint
topic.
Stig. If you go watch the playlist of his book tour where he reads the book throughout the book tour, I at first assumed he was wearing a tux top, but he is wearing a leather jacket and everything, and I'm like, that's my goals.
Also,
that's
if you
my
check
goal,
out
black
Neil
shirt,
Gaiman's
leather
website,
jacket.
like I did today, there's a very nice picture of him.
And I gotta go.
Oh,
look
I
at
have
it.
to see it now.
Now
He just looks
everybody's
very-
going to
He just
Neil.
looks very disheveled to me. It's like I don't know if that would be the photo that I would pick, but okay.
Oh,
Are we
Yeah,
going
no,
to end up
Star
like
Power.
tier ranking Neil Gaiman
he looks
pictures?
like he's been out
Oh
in
my
the
God, I
woods
love
and
that
he's
idea.
a little windblown.
A little
Look,
bit.
Just
again,
one
for
minute.
me, that's goals. I'm like, yes, that's what
Yes,
when
I
I'm
want to be
old.
windblown.
Yes.
American
want
Gods is a lot, and the show was so vastly different to the book, which is sort of good because the book is meh.
Yeah.
But the show, the scene, wow. I have a lot of opinions on the show.
Stardust, the movie, haven't read the book.
I
Okay.
haven't seen the movie.
Wait.
Jenny says Neil Gaiman
The
always looks
movie where
disheveled. That's
the
his
girl is
vibe.
a star.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay. Where should we start with our list of topics?
Neil Gaiman's website also has very interesting, like, categories. Cool stuff and things. Where's Neil? What?
Oh, well, first, before I even get into the topics, I just wanted to have a quick moment before, like, not to do like a big Newbery discussion, but just say, you know, that this was the 2009 Newbery Medal winner. And I know I kind of joked about it before because it is, you know, the Newbery is given from the American Library Association and Neil Gaiman is British. But, like, it is a stipulation, like, the book printed in the U.S. from a citizen or resident, and he had lived in the U.S. for many, many years, and it was first published in English in the U.S. So even though it is a very British book, and Neil Gaiman is British, it totally qualified the requirements to win this American award. So I just did want to make that clear because I know there was a little bit of confusion. Like, wait, why is this very British person? And the book is very British. It feels very British to me.
I didn't know that about the awards, so that's interesting.
Well, I'm pretty sure, isn't it set over in the UK?
Yeah, it definitely felt like a little English village.
Well, because
like-
they had mentioned like the main girl character, the little girl, Scarlet. They had mentioned her family moving to Scotland. So I
Scotland, yeah.
figured it was somewhere kind of close where people
Yeah.
can move for work or something.
I had a very like vivid picture of what the town looked like in my head.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, the
So I
Ghoul
just
name,
wanted-
33rd president of the United States threw me off so bad. I'm like, you're not British. What?
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. I think the first topic I want to start with is the fact that this story was inspired by the Jungle Book, which I did not know on
I
my
did not
first
know that.
read. And when I found it out, it was like, oh my gosh,
That does make
Like,
a lot of sense.
it
That's
blew my
fast.
mind.
Mhm.
That he had first had the idea in the 80s, like when his son was like riding his tricycle around in a graveyard, like a cemetery, like an old one, like yeah, because he said he had like no parks by his house or something.
Great choice, Neil.
Yeah, but then he waited like years and years, over a decade, to actually write the book. But that's where he got the idea, like, oh, what if it was like the graveyard raised a child, like a kid growing up in the graveyard. But the thing is, like, they never call it a Jungle Book retelling, and that's actually how it got the title. You know, the Jungle Book, the Graveyard Book.
Oh, the graveyard, but yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's cool.
So they never call it a retelling, but in a way, I feel like it kind of is a retelling.
oh,
Like, when-
absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know why that maybe they just don't want to give it that label, but when you start to line it up, like I've actually never read the original Graveyard Book, but I've seen the Disney adaptation and the Andy Serkis adaptation.
You mean the Jungle Book?
Yes.
Into the Graveyard Book.
Oh yeah, you knew what I meant. So, did you guys know this going in, or did you pick up on it at any point while reading?
I
did
realized
not
it just
know
when
it
you said.
Yeah.
until you said it in the Instagram chat, and then I was like, "Huh, I can kind of see that." And then that was the extent of my connection there.
Yeah. But yeah, now that you say it, like I could definitely see it.
I
How
can
it's like
see
a lost
some
kid.
similarity.
Yeah, and it gets taken in by, like, instead of it being taken in by animals, it's taken in by ghosts.
Ghosts.
And
Yeah.
also how the people that raised him can't go with him because wild animals can't get to a city, as ghosts can't leave the graveyard.
That's something that confused me the first time I read it when I was reading, and it was like, oh, he had his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Owens, and then it was like, why does he have also a guardian? I was like, what? Like, it confused me at first, and I didn't get it, and then like obviously I got it later on in the book on my first read. But then when I thought about it as being a Jungle Book retelling, it's like, oh, his wolf parents, weren't like actually always like giving him like the lessons.
Yeah, but listen, but with the Jungle Book,
So-
I just thought about it with the Jungle Book. He had two
Mhm.
basically guardians with him.
Yep.
Which was Baloo and
Bagheera.
Bagheera.
Yeah.
And so, or Bagheera or whatever. And so Silas and Mrs.
Lepescu.
Yeah, that
Lupescu,
word.
yeah.
Lepescu. Those are his little guardians.
It did feel like that. That's what I mean. Like, I don't know why
When
they
he's
didn't call
not
it a
with his
retelling,
parents,
because when
he's
you
with
start lining
them.
it up, it does kind of line up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, what?
Yeah.
My mind is blown.
Yeah. And I actually wonder, like, that it had kind of that literary background of the Jungle Book. Like, I do think it, like, brought something a little bit extra to it. Like, and I just think also just the premise and the concept was, it was a good high concept.
Yeah.
Before I lose the chat here, the book. The book is better in regards to Stardust.
That's what I've heard.
I always think of Gaiman as a hobo chic. Nice.
Fair.
I'm going to skip that comment. Gaiman is kind of disheveled. You get away with when you're rich. Totally.
I know.
Definitely.
I can't get away with it because I'm not rich yet. That's why it's goals and not just my day to day.
Okay, I think
we're
I just
too
want to,
poor to be hobo
because
chic.
we haven't my
I guess-
evergreen banner, pacing, plot, and payoff. Normally I say plot and pacing as this, but like I really thought plot and payoff went like really, really good together in this story. Like the payoff in this story, I think was really, really well. And I think, pacing, plot, and payoff, to me, like they all went together in regards to this book. So I had to change my banner up a little bit.
Range.
Yeah, you suddenly get to a point in the story where it's like flipping a switch, and then plot-wise, it's really intense. It really becomes a page turner, and things start happening with the jacks, and
Yes. It's like the first chapters, or the first like even like 50-60% of the book, it almost feels like little short story segments. And I did read somewhere, I think that one of them had been a short story and that he had originally done on its own. And then it like really picks up, and a lot of those like individual lessons that were kind of like learned in those chapters came back to pay off, which I was like, okay, so I could understand the literary praise.
So one of the things that I found interesting with the pacing of the Graveyard Book is, so there's like some advice that goes around that is like you have to have your inciting incident within the first chapter or two of your book, which is not something I actually agree with, just because I come from a 3-generational home and I've seen so much older media that doesn't do that I still enjoy. Like Rocky, inciting incident does not happen until 2/3 through that movie. But the setup is so interesting that it's fine. You just have to know how to work with it. And I feel like the Graveyard Book kind of loopholes it by having an inciting incident as the first scene.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't have another inciting incident until I think the point that maybe Michael was referencing. And then that's when the plot starts the pacing of the plot starts picking up, and then all of the context and the setup from the beginning start coming into play. And so I think that like, yeah, he kind of like has two inciting incidents for the plot and for the story.
It's like when Scarlet gets reintroduced, like when she moves back, like that's really when like it starts rolling.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if we don't have all of that like beginning context and stuff, I don't think it would have been as satisfying the rest of the story.
No, like that's what makes the book work so well, is that payoff. But I don't know, the pacing does feel kind of slow really at points in the beginning and almost disconnected, but because those elements paid off, Gaiman was able to get away with that.
Well, it's like Danny said, if you look at Danny's comment, they say like,
for being on it,
everything feels just disjointed until it all fits together, and then all of a sudden you see the big picture and you see what he's been working towards this entire time. And so like that's how kind of I felt about the Jacks. I never kind of felt like the first time I read it, I didn't get it until the very end, and I was like I was waiting for the Jacks to show up and something to happen. Like I knew that's what was ultimately gonna happen, but I was just waiting because they kept mentioning it when he was younger, and then next thing you know, he's aged up a little bit and some time's passed and he hasn't left the graveyard in some time, and you're like, but what about the Jacks? What are they doing? They're just not doing anything. And so the pacing was a little off to me, but how he fit it all together at the end kind of made it worth it.
So I have a follow-up question. Have you all read similar stories to this? Because I've actually read a lot of stories like this, so the pacing did not feel disjointed to me at all. I just, as soon as it started doing that, I was like, oh, okay, so it's going to be one of these stories.
The only story I've read kind of close where it's kind of like a story type setting where it's like individual little stories kind of placed together. The only one I've read that's kind of like that was the Witcher books. All of those are kind of like that, where they especially the book that comes like the prequel book, the 0.5 one. That one, all of those stories, they're literally just stories, and they're all out of order.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And that's just how it's told, and it took me forever to just get a hold of it. But that's how it was told for the longest time in that book, and I was like, I don't know. but yeah, that's how the Witchers kind of was. Because especially in the first book, everyone was separated, and it took a lot for them to all get together, and it was all like being told, and it felt like kind of a story vibe.
See, I would have almost compared it to like a thriller, but not just anyone, but like a very specific one where all people are in a place and you slowly start to get to know them and you get to know their individual stories. And at the end, you see how it all ties together. Mm-hmm. And as I said, I see that more in thrillers, or done in thrillers that I've read recently. So I compare to that, maybe.
I would add that for pacing, one thing that does make the story feel well paced to me is the fact that like it's how Bod kind of ages at a very consistent pace. And Gaiman doesn't really he's not loud about it. He doesn't really shout it out loud or anything, but he every 50 pages or 75 pages, he makes sure to explicitly say that, Bod is now this age.
Yeah.
And then Bod is now this age. And it feels like it's consistent throughout the book. He's 10 and then he's 12 or something.
For the most part, his age goes, he's about 4 or 5. And then the next time his age is mentioned, it's 8. Then after that, it's 10, and then 11, and then 14, and then 15.
Yeah. So in a way, that kind of does feel like Gaiman is putting pins in the story, and it's kind of making it feel like it's at least making it feel like it's well paced.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Nothing in normal people's lives, nothing that big happens on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So that makes sense for something like that, for him for it to be a little spread out, for him to be learning these things and meeting these people a little spread out. He's just a kid. If it was happening so rapidly, we'd be like, well, that's way too fast. That's unreasonable.
Whose partner is dying?
My husband.
So
He's
No,
like
but I think you guys have a point. You kind of are a little bit converting me, like with your thoughts. Like if you bring it back to the Jungle Book and the idea of really getting a feel for him growing up and this being his home base, like you need to spend time there. You need to have that. So even though part of me, like my writer brain was like, what is the big A plot carrying through? Like, of course we had that scene with the Jackson, like him getting taken away, but like throughout, like I didn't feel like that big thread until like Scarlet comes back in.
Yeah.
But it just works. It
So-
still works.
On the note
Works,
of
yeah.
everything having to add, there's everything having to add to either the plot or the story, which are actually not the same thing. Your
Mhm.
plot is your plot is the underlying arc of what the book is going to be about, whereas
Mhm.
the story is the individual character arc or the character's life and everything. So like Bod's story, every scene adds to Bod's story. Every interaction, every little thing in the book adds to Bod's story. Not all of these scenes add to the actual plot of the book, but
Mhm.
they do add to his story.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what keeps it moving forward. So depending on like how invested you are in like Bod's story or like how patient you are to get to the payoff of that, I can definitely see how the pacing itself would feel slower or bogged down. I'm the opposite. I don't particularly care about the plots very often. I'm invested in the stories. So as long as something's going on with the story, I don't care how long we take to get to the Jacks. They're in the background. They'll be important when they're important. I more care about the small boy and like how he's growing up in a graveyard, isolated from people, but still being raised by people, just very outdated people.
Yeah. I actually on my reread of it, I also had the audiobook turned up quite fast and read it quite fast. And I think that that's maybe not the best way to consume this story. I think consuming it at a slower pace, like almost like thinking of it as a bedtime story, like a chapter, at a time. Having a slower pace while reading, I think, brings more to it. Because the first time I read it, I really sat back and I think I enjoyed it more
Yeah.
or felt a better like the vibe. I do pacing wise. I don't know if that even makes sense.
It does, because I listened to it at 1x speed for my first read through, so I could have time to type my notes. And then my second read through, I was listening to it on 2x speed just so I could refresh my memory, and it definitely was not. Although I will also say he still sounds disturbingly human at 2x speed. And I'm like, sir.
Yeah, I thought I would enjoy the full cast version more because I normally really like full cast, but the Gaiman version was superior in my opinion.
He sounds
He's
like
just
a
so
grandpa
good.
reading you a bedtime story. And like if you watch the live one, how consistent he is with all of
Yeah.
his voices. I'm like, this man
He
practiced.
is a very talented like just in as a narrator, like outside of being an author, and
Oh,
the
yeah.
fact that he's reading his own work and like the voices he does for the characters and just the general it's a talent and a skill that it's
Well,
Yeah,
you
he
know
just
it's
has, like, a
exactly what the
full-on
author
vision.
imagined.
yeah. But he does voice one character in the full cast, which I thought was a really funny nod, like
Which one?
that author, the poet.
Oh,
Oh.
So like he comes in quite late. So when like Neil's voice came on the audiobook, I was like, Neil!
There he is.
That would almost be like it almost feel like a cameo, wouldn't it?
It was so cool. Okay. I want to talk about the tone and the writing style. But before I get there, I just want to do the quick little intermission about talking about the Newbery and about this criticism about it being kind of like, adult books for kids or kids' books that adults like. Because, talking about the writing style and the tone, I think that's an important factor for the tonal discussion, I guess.
I think saying that does a great disservice to children. I, as a child, liked most Newbery books. They were a bit more like mature than other books at my age demographic, but I thought that they were like written really well, and I was more into them than other books. And like My kids were so excited when they found out I was reading The One and Only Ivan. They had all read it in school, and they were like, they loved it. They liked to talk to me about it and everything. So I think that anybody who says that these children's books are too old for children are doing a disservice to kids. Like, is it going to be for every kid? No, but like, I hate the Grapes of Wrath. So
I think something also like kind of important about the Newbery is because it's been going on for 100 years, there was not these definitive categories of, children's books, middle grade book, chapter books, middle grade books, young adult books that there are today. So there is really no definitive set rule of what a book has to be. It can be.
And with kids,
younger
it's all
or older.
dependent on taste. Like I think Casey backstage, you were saying that a child in your life would not really gel with the Graveyard Book. But I know that all three of mine would love them. My oldest is about 10. He'll be 11. My youngest is 6 going on 7. So like a small age gap. And then my middle one is, in the middle of that. But like all three of them, I know. But all 3 of them would really be like, I listen to it and I'm like, yes, another bedtime book for them. And they all
have
listen
kind of
to
bedtime vibes to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And like I did that with Inkheart too, which I know Inkheart is a YA, but like I said, it's all like dependent on just your kids' preferences and the kind of books that they like. Because they also like Percy Jackson, which I would say is written with a younger narrative vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think that Gaiman almost can't help, though, sometimes adding little like flourishes and details to his world and like things that other maybe children's books sort of simplify. And Gaiman doesn't cut those corners.
Yeah, I don't see that as a thing that takes away from it being a kid's book, because like,
I don't either.
Kids can get just as hyper focused on those things as adults can.
I see it as like Gaiman being that type of adult that's like, don't baby talk to your kid, talk to him like an adult. And he's that type. Like he's writing kids' books, but he's an adult writing kids' books, and he's like writing them like he's still going to talk to them like an adult, and he doesn't feel like he has to dumb down this book just because it's a kid.
Yeah.
But I do think that did play into part of the reason that it was awarded the Newbery, just because, that's very like something that I think the committee would have really appreciated the prose style.
Yeah, I definitely think that like the Newbery Award Committee is a little stuck up in their literariness, because like they won't even consider books like Captain Underpants, regardless of its cultural influence, which is what the Newbery Award is supposed to be about.
Yeah, that was part of, again, about some of the criticism about it was about how secretive their selection process is. It's not like something like, for film and TV where they have to like apply for it. Books do not apply to be up for consideration.
Yes.
The committee members just read like hundreds of books a year each. That's what I read, like at least 150 books each.
That's
up to 300 books.
Crazy.
Yeah, I read about how it goes, and that's like they've been really saying like, please release to the public the lists and your reasoning, because it could be great information, like discussing the literary merits, so that like even if you don't want to release the current ones, please release the past ones open to the public.
Yeah,
even if they're like we're only going to release them like after 5 years have gone by, like even that could be like
and the honor picks are drawn from the pool of runner-ups, but there had to be at least a gap to be declared the winner. There had to be like so many votes and like such a gap between the next one to be the official winner. Because I always like wondered, because they just have like the honors, and I kind of wanted to do that during the readathon this month, was like to maybe just read from one year the winner and all the honors and like make my own sort of ranking, but I wasn't that ambitious.
Next year.
You could always do that.
That's true. One thing I want to say though about like the tone and the writing style is, like I said, one of the only other Gaiman books I read was The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which is an adult book. The tone was exactly the same, like for the flashback scene, because like I said, the majority of The Ocean at the End of the Lane is told from a little boy's perspective, just the beginning of him as an older man. And then he reflects on his life, and almost the entire book is him as a young boy. So, yeah,
Right.
the tone was very similar in that way. And I would say Coraline does, to me, read slightly younger than the Graveyard Book. Or is
Yeah.
a little more accessible.
Well, Coraline's also like a very short amount of time compared to the Graveyard Book, where he literally
Like what, half?
almost an adult.
Yeah. It's a lot shorter book, so it's a more simplified plot.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny because this year I have taken a semi-pause with writing my fantasy because I don't know, I just needed to do a deep dive into my author identity. So, and reading a ton of fantasy adult and middle grade books was how I did that. And specifically Kith and Kin, the Critical Role novel, and then this book and one other one reminded me that so there's something I call old man fantasy voice, which I can't stand in fantasy writing. It's like the Robert Jordan and stuff where they're writing in a forest and then they're like, oh yeah, there's this tree and the leaves on the tree. And then 8,000 years ago, there was an army here and my co-commander's family hails from that army. And then I'm 15
Wait, Sam,
pages
are you
later,
saying anything? Because
might take
we are
3
in
steps.
December reading The Hobbit.
So
I may have things to say about that. We'll see what we do.
Sam's
But then
very
I also-
opinionated.
fantasy.
Stay
I
tuned.
realized, stay tuned for hot Sam takes. But I also realized that there's a fantasy voice that is older than that, or also came out around the same time, which I now affectionately call grandpa fantasy. And it's when it sounds like a grandfather is sitting there reading you a story or reading you a bedtime story. And I'm like, that's the fantasy I'm going to write. Grandpa Sam is going to write that fantasy for you. And I think that it's a style that fell out of fashion for adult fantasy and stuff because, you got to take your fantasy seriously. And I'm like, no, I'm bringing it back. I'm writing kids' books for adults. Let's go. So this topic and
do you think the Graveyard Book falls into that?
Oh, definitely. That is grandpa fantasy. I was like, that is my grandfather. Hello, Grandpa Neil. Read to me today.
Like I said, to me, it does feel like it does have the perfect sort of bedtime story. Read this as a family with your family. Read it out loud. Read it together. It definitely has that feel to it. Or even because a lot of the times the Newbery books are really heavily pushed and incorporated in schools. I could totally see this being a classroom read.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I would have been more excited about classroom reads.
Yeah, I think this would be actually a really good classroom read.
We read The Hobbit.
You did.
One of the things that I just want to point out the difference between this and then what I was just talking about with the trees and stuff is that he's like, oh, and then so and so spoke, this character whose tombstone read this from this date and that, and then moves on. And so you get a little bit about that character and then it continues on with the story. You don't get pages and pages about what the tombstone looked like or that character's genealogy or the background. And I'm like, I appreciate this because I like the little whimsical things that are on their tombstones. And I think that really adds to it sometimes. Other times I tuned it out because it was unimportant information, but I still liked that it was there for me to have or not have at my discretion.
So
Yeah.
you don't like Tom Bombadil?
I've never actually read The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, so we'll find
Not
out.
yet.
From what I have heard of Tom Bombadil, he might actually be my favorite part. I don't know. We'll see. Because he sounds like a loony.
ahead. You guys are jumping ahead a couple months.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Do we have any more thoughts on
Tom Bombadil's in The Hobbit? I know he's in Lord of the Rings. I couldn't tell you if he's in The Hobbit.
any
He's
more
not.
thoughts on tone and
didn't
writing
think
style?
No,
No.
he's not in The Hobbit.
I didn't
No
think-
more thoughts.
No more
Okay.
Move on.
Great, because I have another great banner, which is a fun one. Monster
I
archetypes.
have notes.
Ghosts, ghouls, vampires, and werewolves.
I have
mean,
Sam's notes.
That's my
I
favorite.
have my ghosty mug.
Oh, cute.
So-
I have nothing.
Okay. So first, I want to talk about the Jacks of all trades because I absolutely adored that and I loved it. And I was so mad it took me so long to figure out Jack Frost. I figured out Mr. Frost
I knew
was
it
the
right
Jack,
away.
Well, so like he comes in and I'm like, oh, that's probably the Jack, right? And then later, or they just keep calling him Mr. Frost. And then at some point, I'm
Yeah.
like, wait a second.
They had when they said Frost several times, it clicked with me as well.
Yep.
But I was
knew it
also
right
had
away.
started growing suspicious of him.
So there's Jack Frost, whom we of course know is the spirit of winter, and then Jack Kench, who was an executioner in England, like a fairly famous one. And then there's Jack Tar, which Jack Tar is slang for an English sailor or Royal Navyman. And then Jack Dandy, which is actually a short version of Jack-a-Dandy, which has two definitions: a little dandy, an impertinent little fellow, which I knew, and I didn't know that a New Zealand definition for it is a small patch of light reflected from a shiny surface onto another surface, such as a wall or ceiling. And then we've got Jack Nimble from the nursery rhyme, Jack be Nimble, Jack be quick. I was particularly interested how he was going to do this because it's actually Mother Goose canon that all the Jacks in the stories are the same Jack. So Jack be Nimble, Jack be quick, Jack and Jill, they're all the same man.
Ooh,
But Neil Gaiman actually used different Jacks, some of which were real people, and others are just references. And I was so excited about that. I was like, that's such a cool, small, tiny detail that never matters. Except, I think Jack Kench wanted to execute was the one who was real big into killing Bod.
I didn't even try to keep the Jacks straight. Just Jack Frost and Jack Nimble were the only two I remember.
You know,
so
that's why
there was one with like blonde hair and
yeah.
I think Jack
actually,
for them.
No, Jack Dandy had silver hair. So, and then Jack Frost had dark hair, but had grayed over time.
Yeah,
I don't remember which one was blonde.
I was.
I need to go
like,
get my dog.
as soon as Jack Frost ultimately, or let's say Mr. Frost, showed up, I was already suspicious of him. He was too nice.
Mm-hmm.
He was too smooth.
Yeah.
You know, he's like literally the stranger offering the young person the ride.
Oh, I totally got the creeps when he would like offer her a ride.
And then
I was like, "Don't do it, girl! Don't get in a car with a stranger."
Yeah, and you know, he's too convincing and accommodating and stuff. And then a little bit later, in the dinner scene, right, when he's at
Scarlett's house.
Scarlett and her mother's place having dinner, and then there's mention ultimately of Bod, right? And then there's that line where Gaiman says like the corners of his mouth turn up a little bit or something. Then I knew that, you know, this guy is totally sus. And then Gaiman goes on and on for like even dozens of pages, and Mr. Frost is, if anything, increasingly nice.
Yeah.
But I never let him go. I was always suspicious of him all the way up until, you know, he reaches under the floorboard and pulls out the knife and reveals himself as Jack Frost. And
well, I'm your smarty.
No, I totally think that this is one of those things that a child reader would blow their mind.
Yeah.
Like, all of us are adults and we're all writers. So like every time I read a thriller, I'm always like, who's the least suspecting person? Like, who is like the least? And I'm like, I'm putting my money on them, and like half the time I'm right.
So I knew it was Mr. Frost the moment we found out he lived by the cemetery.
In that house,
the moment he was like, yeah, I'm around the cemetery all the time. I moved here to be close to the cemetery, blah, blah, blah. It's like, then obvious. It was so obvious that this man just pops up randomly.
Also, he's like, I want to live by the cemetery. She starts talking about local murders. He's like, oh, but no murder. I'm like,
yeah, but you're so interested in the cemetery.
Yeah, that's true. That was like red flags.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted Scarlett's mom to have a happy end, though.
I know, me
with
too.
a nice guy.
I know.
She was trying so hard.
I know.
Yeah.
Slightly burnt potatoes is just how he likes them, guys.
Oh.
They're just fries at that point. It's fine.
Who doesn't like them that way, right?
No.
He'd call stereotypes though, because he's British.
I do want to talk about like the ghosts in this book, specifically like the powers and like how Bod like because he had like the freedom of the graveyard that he could like also do dream walking and like fading and like
Pass
these
through
different,
like concrete.
yeah,
and
these
Funny how
different like
stone.
magic.
ghost powers.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah,
So jealous.
it was such a nice touch to the book. I think not just to make that he had like safety and sanctuary in the graveyard, but that he also had like the powers of like the ghosts in the graveyard. I thought that was so
Mhm.
cool.
I have a
Being able to
mild
see in the dark.
complaint about the what was it called? The Rite of the Graveyard.
You're the one who
So-
has all the notes in.
This is the one thing I didn't write down.
The freedom of the freedom of
Yes,
the
freedom
the
of the
freedom of the
graveyard,
I'm
correct.
sure it's in like my giant thing of notes, but I didn't want to look there for them, and then I didn't put in the extra notes. But so yes, the freedom of the graveyard. I have one complaint about that, and
Don't
if
share.
you do,
Be
if you
quiet.
do read my giant thing of notes, you'll see it. It's at the end. I'm like, because he's supposed to have the freedom of the graveyard and their protection until he is an adult. He loses it at 15. 15 is not an adult, Neil Gaiman. I have a very big problem with this.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
to be
yeah,
fair,
go for it.
some of those old school people in the graveyard back in their day,
Look.
15 wasn't the time.
Neil Gaiman
Yeah,
didn't grow
that's
up in
true.
those times. He could have amended it. I was like, you're sending out this poor boy.
Oh wait,
But I
Danny.
think though
Give
that
him a
even
passport.
though Bod was surprised to find out that he was kind of being kicked out or punted out or
nobody
popped out of the graveyard,
Yeah.
he was
Nobody
ready.
told him.
Yeah.
And he was
Yeah.
ready to see the
I
world.
don't
And
care. He was still a baby.
Very much like though the Jungle Book, where Mowgli gets more and more pulled into the human society and more longing to go there. And that was very much the case with Bod, where he kind of was dipping his toe outside.
yeah,
You know,
more
He
and
could
getting
have
more.
used
dipped
to
it
being around
outside for
people.
3 more years because got a part-time job, saved him up some money, bought an apartment.
Sam, your mom is coming out.
But instead
My
they got
mom
the
has come out
passport
since I
and
was
said, "Bye."
5. There was no surprise there. I told my
Um,
mother at 4 I wanted siblings. I have 2.
What was I going to say? Oh, so is there anything else about the ghosts? I did like that Bod like would because obviously like they stay cemented as who they are, and like Bod would outgrow like his ghost friends. Like he was
Yeah,
kind of
that
like
was-
friends with the one ghost, and then like okay,
that
they
was
stayed
amusing.
kids, and I grew up.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and it's like they said with the female ghost, I can't remember her name, his friend.
Liza?
Witch. Yeah.
Liza Hemstock?
I'm terrible with names. Liza, it's like the same thing with her. Like she all of a sudden like went through this phase where like because he got older and she's like she doesn't see you as that little boy anymore, and it's like and so she stopped.
Yeah, that
treating
was
him the
that was an
same.
interesting dynamic. Yeah, he was like the little boy and she was the teenager. Then all of a sudden, wait a minute.
Yep. And he's like, I don't get it. What's changed? I'm still the same person. I was like, that's such a typical thing to be concerned about. I love it.
To Danny's comment,
I
yes,
meant-
the phrasing is that until he is grown up.
Oh, grown up.
But
Sorry, wrong comment.
it's not supposed to be, from what I understand, it's not Bod's understanding of grown up. It's his guardian and parents' understanding of grown up. And Silas should know better.
Yeah, but Sam, it's when his
Yeah.
character arc is ready, and his arc was ready.
But if I knew he was 18.
Silas has shit to do, okay?
Well,
He can't
we're
work
thinking
on
about
it.
Apparently.
Like when Bod is like, "Wait, you don't actually live here," and he's like, "No."
Silas has had nothing to do for the past 50. He can wait another 3. I assume he's a vampire. So 3 more years is a drop. in the
Okay,
bucket.
but
It's
speaking
fine.
of the vampires, because like I put it on the list of monsters, like they never like specifically confirm, but like he makes it so obvious.
Yeah.
But also, it was just so good. I loved that, especially when they're doing the macabre, where he's like, "I don't belong to the living or the dead." Like, oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's Taya.
Good old Silas.
One, I just picture him walking around in like his black cape, like vamping out, like
Well, this by myself.
Well, that's why I was so surprised on the during the the cover wars, the graphic novel cover. He is like obviously a vampire. Like it's like
I don't think Neil was trying to hide it so much as he just didn't want to say vampire because maybe of how people would imagine vampires are.
Yeah.
And
I think he was just
he took
putting
a
the
lot of-
breadcrumbs like to
Yeah.
let the kids figure it out on their own. Like obviously, like because again we're adult readers, it was like very obvious. But I think like a child reader putting together the clues, like
Silas
they
is
would've
the
made him
only
scary.
person. Well, Silas is the only like monster thing that's not explicitly stated, though.
Yeah.
The only one. So that's why I think it's more. He just didn't want to say vampire because like
I
of
think
how
it would've
most
made him
people-
scary.
Yeah, that-
like scary for the kids. Like he's all of a sudden he's a threat to you
Mhm.
because he like they literally only mentioned him eating I think once. He's like I'm gonna go.
you
eat
don't
at
think they
her.
could have confirmed it later on in the book when Bod was older?
No, because of the readers, because the target demographic are kids.
Oh, so you think that
Yeah.
some kids could read the book and never pick up on it?
Yeah,
Okay.
like
I don't know. I think they maybe I don't know.
I just think during the Maccabees when it was like so obvious, like when
Well,
like,
at
I'm
the
not
same
alive
time,
or
they
dead.
mentioned
There's a lot of
suicide, they
undead
mentioned
stuff.
death and murder. So it's like
Yeah.
they did all this other stuff. So it's like, why couldn't they just go ahead and mention that he was a vampire?
I
Yes.
don't know
I
why
don't-
the vampire would. Be
I don't know.
scarier
I
than
thought it would have
stating
been
the
funny
fact
if, like,
Liza was murdered,
when-
but
When
Yeah,
Bod
I don't
goes
know.
to school and like he has with the classmates, if they would have like sort of talked about vampires and Bod would have just been like, huh, like I know
That
a lot
sounds
about this
familiar.
topic or something. Like if only they knew, where they said the word out loud and Bod never confirmed it and Gaiman never confirmed it, but it was still like confirming it. Like I don't know.
fair with all of the different like monsters in here, I wasn't 100% certain it was gonna be a vampire specifically until he mentioned the soil, and I was like, oh, it has to be a vampire. I'm like, that's what he's got to be. So because until then, I was just like, okay, so he's an undead thing.
Yeah.
They've
I
mentioned
totally,
mummies and
on my
Ygritte.
first read though, didn't pick up Miss Lupescu being a werewolf at first. Until they like said it, I was like, oh. And then on the reread, it was like, obviously, okay.
I love their interpretation of werewolves and how they're called the Hells of Hounds, or the Hounds of Hell, not the Hells of Hounds, the Hounds of
God.
Hell.
Oh, I
But
read that
no,
this
she
was...
calls herself a Hound of God, and it's
Right.
her perception that she's doing God's work. But the
Right.
ghouls call her a hellhound because
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
like, is she going to be a hellhound or a werewolf? And the ghouls call her a hellhound, and then somebody else calls her a werewolf, and
Yep.
she calls herself a Hound of God. So it's like, I like that all of these concepts are the same thing.
This was one point that it did say that this was the Werewolf and Hounds of God was a parallel to the Jungle Book. Yeah,
Okay.
was it a spin-off story from the Jungle Book or from the second book of the Jungle Book? There's something in there that segment was based off of. So just thought I would point that out, furthering the fact that I think that you could call this a retelling, but maybe that's just because I'm writing my own retelling and I want retellings to have literary merit. But
When I messaged the Discord and I was like, I'm 25% through and I'm highly confused. I was at the ghouls part and I was like, what the fuck's going on? Did he just get kidnapped by like a bunch of like officials or something? I was working. I was at work and I was like, all of a sudden you're talking about all these random like history people and I'm like, wait, what? And I had to like rewind. I was like, okay, let me start this back again. It's like, okay, no, so he
See,
got
that-
kidnapped
I
by
was-
some ghouls and
I had to pause and rewind so I could write down all their titles because like he would say the Duke of Westminster, the Bishop of Barton Wells, but then the ghouls would call each other Your Highness or Your Worship, and I'm like, hold on, which one of you is
oh, I think this would have been a super
don't-
confusing scene though for kids. Like,
Yes.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I was like, there
But I
were
think
the
that's
three of them,
intentional.
right? And
No,
No,
I
there was
didn't-
3 at first, and then
Yeah.
there
that the
was
president of the
7.
United States.
Yeah. So, like with the original sort of main 3, I was very aware that, like, I couldn't separate them, like in terms of character or characters,
which I
and
think
they were
is
just kind of like
intentional.
3 joint voices, almost like the same kind of thing, all lumped
Yeah.
together.
yeah.
Because you
And
just kind of get hit by all 3 at once, and you see the different names, but you don't like. My mind, at least, didn't like grab onto like 3 different characters being distinct or anything.
My mind labeled them as A, B, and C until I could
Yeah.
connect.
Yeah, I
them.
think I just thought of them as like weird little, I don't know.
I like
creatures,
that
ghoul.
he has ghost and ghouls as different things
Yeah.
in the book, and I thought the ghouls' self-naming convention was pretty intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it was nice because it is, a spooky book that he took the time to make sure that there wasn't not only ghosts, there was ghouls, there was a vampire, like kind of mysteriously, and there was a werewolf. Like it added just that layer to it of, the horror layer, the fun paranormal layer. Like that's when you pick up a book called The Graveyard Book, he's delivering on that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I want to add night gaunts are things from H.P. Lovecraft lore, and that also threw me because I was like, the fuck is a night gaunt? Because I don't really know much about Lovecraft, and I'm like, what do you mean I have to Google a monster, Neil? And then I did, and I'm like, oh, that's why. So
one of my favorite things is when the flying creature bird thing that saved
Night gaunt.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how he talked to them, and like they taught him how to yell for help.
That
in
was
different
such a good,
languages.
like,
I was
yeah.
like, that's so freaking smart. Like that's such a good little way that he put that in there. I love
When
it.
Yeah,
they
because when
had
he
the
brought it up, it seemed
lesson-
like the most boring lesson. Like, it
Mhm.
just seemed like putting something in random, like to emphasize how boring the lesson was, and then when it paid off, it was
when
like,
is he gonna get kidnapped?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why are you teaching him how to say help in so many languages, Miss Lapushka?
But when he said that, I wasn't thinking that she was teaching him how to say help in freaking bird language.
That was the only one we heard, though. I could say SOS and Night Gaunt, and none of the others.
Yeah, it
do
did
we
feel
have-
a little bit. It did feel a little bit convenient when it was like suddenly it's like I have this
This is
help
what
me
happens.
all lined up.
No, this is
And-
what happens when the main character's guardians are actually smart and get paranormal tutors. They actually learn things.
I
that are
really
gonna be
like
relevant.
Miss Lupesco because they
love-
really set
Yeah.
her up first as like, oh, the strict, boring teacher. Like, oh, I wish Silas would come back, and then it's like, actually, she's cool.
She's
And
like,
also
"I
the
can't love
didn't
her
do
'cause
her
she can teach me more."
justice.
Yeah,
My heart.
Yeah.
that one
The-
hurt.
The last monster in the book was the Schlier.
Oh yeah,
Right.
I didn't put the Sleer, but I guess
Oh, is that what it was called? I
I've-
was thinking
yeah,
of
the Schlier.
Sleer.
I thought the first time I
SLEER.
listened to it, I thought it was the Slayer.
Yeah, it sounds like he says the Slayer, but it's the Schlier.
Oh.
and
Yeah, I had to look it
I
up
was
to
hearing
see how it was.
seer, like the seer.
Oh, I heard that too. I was like,
I
what are
heard
you
the first time- I
saying?
heard him say Seer and then Slayer and then
Yeah.
Sleer and then I was like Lear and I'm like, I googled it because I'm like my dyslexic brain cannot handle.
Yeah.
this.
Michael's
I need
over
to
here
do
like
it.
with the physical copy, like
Yeah, like
"What's
it's
your
always been
problem?"
Slayer.
Oh right.
Michael is
I'm
the
He's
only
like, can't
one.
relate. Can't relate.
Michael, you're the only one
Also-
that read it physically, right? We all did audio.
I think so, yeah. All right, but the Sleer is, I believe it's inspired by the Bethier in Celtic mythology, which is a serpent with multiple heads, or also a dragon with a serpent body and multiple heads. And for anybody who just so you know, in case you want to look that up or learn more information about that, because I like the monsters. That's what I'm here for.
I was gonna bring up the Sleer during the payoff because I mean that was kind of the big payoff of the story.
You didn't.
Like,
But you did it.
But you didn't.
Michael, I was gonna ask you since you read the physical copy. You mentioned there were some illustrations mixed in.
Mhm.
Would you mind sharing with the class
Yeah, sure. So it's like
since we all read audio?
Full screen
you
him.
can-
Well, if he has, do you want me to full screen you, Michael?
He
Yeah,
does
sure.
it to
You
people
might.
without their permission all the time.
So like let's see here. I'm trying to.
Throw stuff at us. Thank you.
Oh,
You skipped
Wait,
something.
What I'll just do is like actually find.
Yeah, find one.
So there's like this, for example.
oh, pretty.
That's
That is very
cool.
cute.
I
That really
need to
helps
love it.
with like being able to picture like what you're reading. I love
I'll
that.
show you another. Let's see here.
Again, and it also like makes it more child
I
friendly.
think this is Silas with Bod here.
Oh,
Oh, that's really nice.
that also
Kinda
looks
chilly.
scary. Looking
In
at
the
I
it.
like
graveyard.
it.
Let me see if I can find a third one. This is Bod.
Aww.
Oh, such a cute
That's the
little
scene
dude.
where he got yelled at by that other kid for stealing his book.
Yep.
Oh, thank you for sharing. That's so nice. Since we all listen to audio, we missed out on
Yeah.
that.
There's also like this edition has a lot of back matter.
Like what?
so, like for example, let me just see here.
Oh, Danny says there's something on page 291, Michael, of this Lear. Or
Oh, just a sec. 291, you say?
291.
Well, 290. It might be a bit different with my edition, but 292 to 293, it's like the Sleer.
Wow.
And then, like, you can see, like, also on the recto, there's the pizza because they go to the pizza joint right after.
Oh,
Right. Oh, that's cute.
that's super
Yeah.
cute.
But there's
I felt so bad for this Lear. It just
I liked this
there's
Lear.
also like
Oops.
you know the
the lady
the
in
lady,
gray.
gray
Oh,
lady
the
with
lady gray,
cobweb
yeah.
dress or something, cobwebs like on her great
She
big
was
horse,
kind of
right?
scary.
And so there's like, okay, so right after the story itself, there's acknowledgments, and that's written by Neil Gaiman, of course. And then there's the Newbery Medal Acceptance
I was
speech.
just going to ask if that was in there because some of the other Newbery books I read had them. And I
Yeah.
tried to look online to find his speech and I couldn't find it anywhere online.
Oh, it's right here. It's I'm flipping through it now. It's not short.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know they're long because like I read some of the other ones
Yeah.
and some of the other.
And then
winners.
there's this thing here. It's the story behind the Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. It's
Oh.
basically, so this is probably basically an author's note at the end
Yeah,
of the
that
book.
I think was included on the audiobook, or at least
Okay.
the version that I read. Have him telling the
Then
story
there's
about the Jungle
handwritten
Book.
pages from the Graveyard Book. So like there's like some kind of like spreads, kind of showing his drafts, but also like his handwriting and
That's so cute.
Cool.
stuff like that.
That's
You
awesome.
have
it's
a
pretty
really
cool.
nice edition, Michael.
Oh, thank you. It's all I could find. I just that was all that was there on
Well,
the shelf. I just picked
He's like, it
up.
wasn't on
It
purpose.
did win the cover war, that blue cover. That was the one that everybody voted for after all the brackets.
And then there's also sketches from the Graveyard Book. It says like sketch by Neil Gaiman, sketches by Dave McKean. So there's just some sketches. Here are some sketches.
This man can draw too?
Of course you can.
And I think that's about it. Yeah. And then there's just like a Neil Gaiman bio, like right on the last, like basically the back cover.
Aww.
Like you've literally got this Neil Gaiman bio, and then like it's just the other side of the back cover. So that's it. But yeah.
That's cool. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
No, did Anne just go off? I was just going to bring up her discussion topic.
Wait,
Mia, I'm sorry. I sneezed and had to blow my nose. I thought you didn't need to see that.
Okay, sorry. I was just going to bring up the discussion topic that you put up, which was found family, and I took it one step further and said it takes a village.
Oh, I love that.
And I was going to put in parentheses a graveyard, but
graveyard. That's
I
actually
didn't want to type
quote.
that much.
That's very sweet. Which it's, not going to say it's matching my book club's theme for the month, but it is.
Well, you were the one who suggested this as a discussion topic, so
Yeah. Because, obviously, he falls into the graveyard in a way, but like they're so ready, like especially his parents. I feel like they're so ready. Like, not saying they waited for an opportunity like this, because how would they? Like, what?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And with his guardians, both of them that we mentioned earlier, I don't know, it feels like a good place to be for him.
I would have actually liked to see more of his actual parents, the Owens.
Yeah.
Owenses.
Yeah, that's true. But we did get to meet so many other people in the graveyard that like
Yeah.
had an impact on him. And especially when he was like doing his schooling, that like he went around the graves to like count up numbers and learn the letters and like
That was my favorite.
and learned all these bits of history from like
And I love how, like, when he finally did go to school, he was like, he's always throwing in this weird stuff that
That's not
Like-
there.
oh,
not
I
there in
loved
the
that
book.
when he went to school and they're like that Bob Owens kid.
Bob Owens.
It was so funny.
Not to be confused with Bob Evans.
Yeah,
It was so funny. I loved that.
that Bob Owens kid.
Yeah. Gosh darn him.
Or like when the police officer says, "What's your name?" and he goes, "Nobody."
Nobody.
We didn't even really talk about the fact that his name is Nobody, which does kind of fall into the It Takes a Village because they're all like suggesting, like, he looks like this person, he looks like this person.
Yeah.
He looks like nobody.
Like that. He looks like himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Silas was so Silas is probably my favorite character and one of the best guardians I've read in a kid's book because like he's not perfect, but he is pretty like cutting. Like when they start talking about how the kid's gonna be fed and stuff, he could just be like, "Nah, I ain't doing it. I'm leaving." But he's like, "No, I'll do it. I'll help take care of this kid. Sure, I'll make sure he gets food." And then everyone's throwing out names, and she's like, "You know, he looks like nobody but himself. Nobody." And he's like, "Nobody Owens." But you can tell from like his tone and stuff, he's like, they will never find him if his name is Nobody. That's great. Yes, the kid can't even
Yeah.
fuck that up. It's so awesome. And
Yeah.
I was like,
The name
can I
was
be
just, it
careful
was
with
so
you?
perfect. Like the perfect amount of like quirky and like having Bod as like his nickname. It just,
It works.
It does.
it works, it quirks.
I wonder if anyone, like over the last 10 years or so, or a bit more, was ever actually named Nobody
I really
because of the book.
I hope.
Like,
really
I mean, you know, it's not that far fetched. You could
It's
go with
not.
Bod.
it's the sad thing. I'm just hoping that.
I've seen weirder names, sadly.
Do you want to share with the class?
Nope.
Okay, so according to the national statistics, this is probably the United States because yeah.
Yeah.
It says Nobody is ranked as the 90,969th most
on
popular
there.
given name in the United States with an
What?
estimated population of 28.
28.
28
Sorry
people
to
named
those
Nobody.
28
Yep.
children.
So there's 28 people running around with the name Nobody.
There you go.
Well, I hope
Stanley,
at
would
least
you
one
name
of them
To
loves it.
Nobody? Just let us know.
Jeez, my dog.
I feel like I had something else to say, and it just like went right out my brain. What do you guys think about the fact that he never finds out? Oh, I was just going to bring that up. That's what I wanted to say, Danny. Like you read my mind. I loved the fact that we never learned his birth name. I loved that.
And
It
he was
would've
okay
ruined
with it. He was
would've ruined
okay
it.
with it. He was like, "This
Yeah.
is my family. I don't need to know my name."
Yeah. He's
My
like, I
name's
have a name,
Nobody.
and it's Nobody
Uh,
Owens.
Yeah, Jack does say, like, he's like, what is it? Like Peter, Paul, or something. So you do get a sense of, I could even find it.
But I
I
thought they
don't-
didn't actually say the name.
No,
No,
he
they didn't.
His
mentions
name
it-
is never stated.
Yeah,
Jack,
it's not.
Jack is throwing out common boy names, Peter, Paul, because like that's just
Oh.
random names. Yeah.
Well, he was
Yeah.
like baiting him.
Taunting
Okay, I forgot
Yeah.
about
Yeah, 'cause he
this.
was
But
baiting
he's
him.
actually also like kind of trying to remember what it was. But
I
he
don't
doesn't
think
care.
he was sincerely
doesn't-
trying to remember. I think he was just
No.
baiting him.
I think he was pulling a Michael kind of sincere moment.
What's that? You can just go ahead and carry on. I might even try and
I
find
love
it.
that. I love that bit when he was like, "No, I have a name. It's nobody owns." Him acknowledging his family, and not just
Yeah.
those are the people that raised me, but those are the people that love me and that I love. And,
Yeah,
you know,
totally
Yeah,
fits into
that's
our
my
found
family.
family discussion banner. Can make anything fit, I think, with that theme.
that's true.
I like that Mrs. Owens was the last person to speak to him in the book.
Yeah. I was so sad when I was re-listening to it, and she wasn't there when, you know, his father was like saying goodbye, and I was like, she can't, because I didn't
Yeah.
remember that well, right? It's like she can't
Yeah.
not like show up, and then she does. I'm like, oh,
So
my heart is happy and I'm crying.
Gaiman does a reprise of the lullaby, like when she first is calming him down while the council in the graveyard is talking about whether or not he can stay.
Mhm.
She sings him a lullaby that she doesn't remember the end of. It actually
Right.
kind of makes a joke that she's like, oh, is the end like Handsome Harry Bacon or something like that?
Yeah.
But then when she sings it to him as he's leaving, she remembers the final line. And
It's
she
so
sings it to him.
special.
Look, I know you guys are gonna make me cry too.
I have the lullaby and the lullaby revised plus Bod's responses typed out right there.
Yeah, I did pick up on that too, the way that, that came back and then she did know the ending. But I did find it, I think you guys remember it a bit better than me. It goes like, Bod said, the Sleer told me to find my name. What was it? Jack said, let me see, was it Peter or Paul or Roderick? You look like a Roderick. Maybe you were a Stephen. He was playing with the boy. So yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, he's being an ass.
I greatly enjoyed Jack Frost as an antagonist. I especially liked when he when Bod disappears in the attic and he's like, oh, you think I can't see you? You're right, I can't, but I can smell you. And I'm like, that would be terrifying. So especially in comparison to when the jeweler who had tried to kidnap Bod to get him to, especially because he kept lying to him and saying, oh, I can see you, come out now. And Liza's trying not to lose her shit because she's like, oh, can you?
Oh, they're
Can you see
giggling.
him? Yeah. And so to have that, very obvious, oh, well, this guy's just
He's
trying
being
to
serious.
lure him out. And then to have Jack be like, yeah, nah, I can't see you. But who cares? I'm still going to kill you. I'm like, oh, yep.
I don't feel like that whole pawn shop thread really did come back, really. I mean,
just sort of bringing up the Jacks, I think, and the fact
I feel like
with the card.
I feel like you're supposed to get that's why Jack came back.
And also, it was supposed to
he
also realize why, Bod
Okay.
couldn't leave the graveyard, why it was unsafe for him out in the world.
It was both character development for Bod, and we did get that scene which
Yeah.
Jack lives with his grandma. I was very intrigued by that fact.
Yeah.
It never matters. I'm like,
Yeah.
I need
That's what I
more
mean. I feel like
information on that.
Gaiman puts in
But-
sometimes all these little extra things. It's like,
It makes it
it's not
feel
necessary.
more
He can't help it. He can't help
fleshed
to flourish out the world. He can't. I feel like he really can't help it.
Yeah, because he just comes downstairs. His grandma's like, "Are you okay?"
Which,
and Jack's
again,
like, "I sense a disturbance."
I feel like for adult readers, you pick on that up on that kind of stuff, but I also feel it gives the book a really good rereadability.
Yes.
So, even though I enjoyed my first read better more than the reread, but
It also
You
gives
did?
us one of Liza's spell, which was fun. Behold, be dusk, be dream, be wine, be night, be dark, be wish, be mind.
Yeah. It was just I liked I didn't put that also, I think, on the monster archetype, so I guess a witch isn't really an archetype, but yeah, Liza is a witch. So it is like, oh, I got the witch trials, and it's like, oh, thinking unjustly, and she's like, no, but I am a witch.
Yeah.
She's like,
yeah.
oh no, I 100% was one. It's fine.
Yeah.
I cursed them all.
She's
They
like,
all
"I killed
died
their
of
asses."
the plague. It's cool. She wiped out a whole village, and it's something I wanted to say at Tote. One of Gaiman with Tone. Sorry, I meant to say this earlier and forgot. But he does the thing. It's like my favorite thing with fairy tales and everything, where you tell a very dark story in a light-hearted tone, so it doesn't feel as dark. And that's very much the fairy tale like whimsy. That's the bedtime story feel, in my opinion. And so
Right.
like she literally talks about the fact that she was burned and was it burned and drowned or burned and buried? It's one of those two.
Drowned and burned.
Drowned, burned, and then buried.
Yeah.
And so while she was burning, she cursed them. And then like the plague came in and Bod's like, did everybody die? She's like, well, everybody that watched me, which is probably everybody.
And
So
he
I'm
was like, are any of them buried here? And he's like, no, they were all in like those plague like mass graves.
they were just, and I'm like, that was a very dark conversation.
I liked the detail of the plague coming from the rolled up carpet.
Oh yeah,
like from far away.
yeah.
You know, from like a foreign country. I don't think he actually says, but yeah.
Again,
That
Gaiman,
was a
he
good
doesn't
detail.
he doesn't skimp on details like that. He layers things in like it's so seamless, like in a way like I can't do that with my writing. I didn't mean witch isn't an archetype, Danny. I meant I didn't know if it fell under monster archetype. I don't know if I would call a witch a monster is what I meant.
It depends on the thing. I definitely think in this story she would be under the same thing as because when Lepeshka is teaching him, she's like, there's the living, the dead, daywalkers, nightwalkers, ghouls, mistwalkers, high hunters, hounds of God, and solitary types. And for some reason, vampires are under solitary types.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
So I would assume that either witch falls under the living or something else. I think that's humans and then supernaturals is like the short end of it.
No, I should have put it in there just because we were kind of talking about all the paranormal elements and creatures, humanoids.
Yes.
Wait, I did have one other banner, but we did kind of discuss some of these things, which is, my favorite banner. Themes, symbols, and motifs.
I love the how death is handled in this and how Bod being raised the way he was just like so accepting of death just being a thing. He's not even afraid of dying. The only reason he has any sense of self-preservation is because the people who care about him have worked so hard to keep him alive.
For him it was like no difference. Like, oh, can't I just be here dead with you guys? Who cares? And it's still like
I really liked that conversation that he had with Silas where he's like, I'm not afraid to die. All of my friends are dead. And Silas is like, but you have so much more to give. Like, this is what we were talking about. It's but the potential. Like, you still have so much more to give outside of this graveyard, and you can't do it dead.
Yeah.
So he's like,
you have something that we don't have. You have.
Yeah.
Imagine how awesome it would be to grow up your whole life, like your first, 15 years, and to totally accept life, basically like in relation to like death, like to totally accept that, okay, like, this is how it is. This is like to just be like, totally accepting that as like good enough and like good enough to be happy, right? Like this whole graveyard kind of picture with all of these dead people, and then to realize that there's a great big world out there with living people, and like everything that you can do with that, and how you can make meaningful differences, and you can actually do things. Like, imagine how awesome that would be to suddenly realize there's like life plus out there or something,
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what he realized at, I want to say around 10, because like that's when he became dissatisfied with staying in the graveyard. That's when he wanted to start
Yeah.
going to school, because
Yeah.
before then he was completely static, which I feel goes like perfectly aligned with child development, because like, you know, kids are perfectly content with their like tiny world. They're content with just staying at home with parents and stuff for the most part, if that's all they know. But then there comes an age where they're like, no, I want more now. Mom, you're not
Yeah.
good enough anymore. I need friends. And it's like,
Well, do you think like the fact that he hears like all these life stories of all these people in the graveyard, that it almost has a little bit like this theme of like going out and seizing your life, you know?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I don't. Yeah, I 100% think so. I don't necessarily think that it's a graveyard versus, like, I don't think it's a dead versus living thing though. I think that's just like true for anybody who grows up with grandparents.
Yeah, but is it almost just in a way like you're sitting in here taking stories away from other people, almost like us, like as writers, like, oh, we're reading books but like not going out, or just like watching TVs, taking in stories but not taking the chance to be like, I could be a protagonist in my own story.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Like he's saying, like I think what you're saying is like he's listening to all these people tell them their life stories and all
Bless
these
you.
great things that they've done in their lives or whatever, be it Bod's stuck in the graveyard,
Yeah.
listening to other people's stories instead of just living his own.
Yeah, and he's so
Yeah.
content with that, but until a certain point when he wanted to learn and go to school.
Yeah, like I agree with you. That follows along with what I was saying with it going with just that's how kids develop, especially if like they're in big families or you come from like a third generational home or something. I grew up listening to stories of my grandfather who grew up on a farm, who was a rodeo star, who like went he served in the military, and he like traveled and did a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, and I have to stay home and clean my room? What the parents? I want to be a rodeo star.
I know I definitely when I was a kid had that, like, where a friend would call me up and invite me to do something and I would say, oh, I can't, I'm at home reading, I'm reading a book right now, I'm reading a book tonight. And I remember getting yelled at, like, go out into the world, what are you doing, your book is going to be there when you get back. But like I was so like focused, like I could not imagine, like, and I know like I got some judgment for that.
I have to pop out for a bit. I'll be back. If we're still going in like 15, I'll be back.
I'm also wondering if like the fact that Bud has this family in this specific graveyard is holding him back in a way, where he's like, I don't want to go, to, I don't know, the other end of the world and die there and be buried there so that I don't see my family again.
Because like I didn't even think about that. And
I did think about this, Anne. I thought about, and I don't think Gaiman addresses it even up to the end, but this idea of Bod himself dying, and like where would he be buried, right? Like there's no mention of him, or is there?
I don't think so. I think it's the potential of him having a life.
Does he ever say anything like, basically, well, I'm going to go out and live my life now, but in
I'll see you
a good
again.
handful of decades, I'll see you again because I'll make sure that I'm buried here, and then
he doesn't
not that specifically,
like that. No.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhat implied, like the goodbyes aren't like we will never see each other again, but they're also not see you in a couple of decades.
Yeah.
I think it's left open to like Bud will go out and have his life, and if he decides that at the end of his life he still wants to be with that family, like he will make the arrangements.
Wait, Sam from The Great Beyond says that losing the freedom of the graveyard is part of he'll lose his memory. No. But you know what? I actually was thinking about this when you guys earlier were talking about Silas and like the fact that he didn't actually live in the graveyard and just came for Bod. I was like, Neil Gaiman could really like do like an adult like spin-off novel like this, like focused on Silas and like sees Bod like when Bod's like 45, like out in the world, like and Silas would still be the same. Like I don't know. I Neil Gaiman, please do that.
I want a book of like the Silas and Mrs. What's her face, like the protectors. Like it seemed like they were like, in like an organization of.
I was wondering that too.
The honor guard.
Silas having like
a
paranormal
so organization or something. Yeah, like Sam just said, let Bod join the honor guards. Like that would be so cool.
Yeah. so like fighting just as much in the comments.
Okay, when did this book come out? Are
Could
we
be a
still
prequel,
alive?
though.
Are we still alive in 100 years when this is like up for grabs? When you can do whatever you want with it?
No, but fan fiction you can do at any time.
Fair.
But who has time for that? I know some people do, but I'm always like, I can barely make myself write my own books. I can't write
Right.
Fair.
anything else. What was I gonna say? Oh, did anybody have any like other like specific motifs or symbols, especially that came to mind?
I mean,
I'm sure.
I feel like money is mentioned a couple of times where Bot like found all of those coins, and then
old
at the
coins,
end,
yeah.
Silas gives him like money again, and I don't know what to make of it, but it does get mentioned too often for me to be like, okay, it's just a thing that's happening.
Yeah, that's true. The coins, that was a nice touch.
Yeah. I liked the business card, Jack's business card, where they had to burn it to like. To me, like they were like, don't burn it. So like every time, and he was about to light it up when like they decided not to or whatever. And so like to me, that's a way to call him, signal him, like to burn it or whatever. So I thought that was kind of cool that they were like, don't burn this business card.
Yeah, I remember the way that sort of thread ended was, like you say, they didn't burn it, and then Silas takes it from Bod, and he basically says, "Okay, now I have to get rid of this thing."
And then we don't really hear anything else.
That's what
about
Silas
it.
says, and then that's kind of it. You don't hear
Yep.
anything more about what Silas does with the card.
Yeah.
Could really
We
use
just
a
need a book about
companion
Silas.
novel. But that's the thing. It's very hard. Well, it has been done before, but like to do one story, a middle grade, and then a companion as a different age bracket,
Yeah.
but an adult companion. But I think Neil Gaiman could pull it off just because, like we said, like he already seems to have a little bit of an extended like threads in his stories. Like Danny said, Stardust related back with the Hemstocks, and the Ocean at the End of the Lane also had them. So he could have like the honor guard and not have like Silas as the main character, but like Silas and Bod like show up.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be fun. Let's just write him a letter and tell him what he's supposed to
Yeah,
write.
let's all write him letters.
Come on, Neil.
He'll definitely hear this. We'll just tag
Are
him
we
on
already on
Instagram.
a first name basis at this point?
I mean, yeah, he's got my last name as his first name, so why not?
Somebody.
Anybody's daughter, anybody?
Stop.
Jesus.
What about like Nobody Junior?
Wait, I was going to ask a question. Shh, you guys, I was going to ask
Sorry.
a question about symbols. Can somebody refresh my memory? What were you guys?
I mentioned money.
Him on Tumblr, I think.
Yeah, there's so many funny like screenshots of Neil Gaiman replying to questions on Tumblr. He's hilarious.
I mean,
I was going to say we could link this discussion, but then I forgot about how disheveled I talked about it.
but is
Sorry,
he
Mr.
even
Gaiman.
is he even in the chat?
Did you just say Mr. Gaiman after
Neil?
calling him Neil the whole time?
Neil, are you there?
Mr. Gaiman.
Someone try and at Neil him and see if it
I feel
pops
like
up.
it's like a Ouija board. Are you in the room?
I mean, we didn't say the hobo chic was bad. We just said it was hobo chic.
Yeah, it's a look.
We said it was chic.
Disheveled is the
Isn't
new
it?
shoveled, you know?
It's true. Wait, like Neil had all those rats in Coraline, right?
Yeah.
And Violet.
Symbols. What were the items like in the Sleer was
Sorry,
guarding?
I just had an idea. You know those memes that go around like, I'm gonna tell in the future, I'm gonna tell my kids this was this. I'm gonna tell them the rats in Coraline or that's Violet. I'm gonna tell my kids in the future the rats in Coraline's Violet. Like
You know, I thought about doing Coraline as a book club pick at some point. So
I think that'd be a good one.
Yeah.
That-
Oh, we should have
that
did
would
that one for the for next month. Just
Yeah.
do two game-ins in a row. So you had asked a question, what were the symbols in the grave? It was a brooch, a goblet, and a knife.
Yeah, stone.
oh, a knife is definitely a symbol of in the story.
Yes.
It's the opening image.
Yeah.
That is true.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the brooch, he tries to go and sell it, and it's like supposedly like a really expensive thing, and he was really intrigued, and he really
Yeah.
wanted to know where he got it so he can go rob that grave.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
stone was snake stone. And like the brooch overall was just like really well made also.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting term, huh? Snake stone.
It is. Yeah. Also, Sam's next comment, yes. And I feel like it's so rude that we were never told about any rituals. Like, come on, Neil. Come on.
I liked that it was
That's
almost up for interpretation to like
I mean, because
project
Sure.
like who was the Sleer's original master. Like
Yeah.
I like
Mhm.
ooh.
We're
well,
just
no,
sorry.
honestly, like when you're a kid, you're not gonna really know all of that, anyways. Like you're not gonna really read between the lines as a kid as much as what we are now, you know. So like we're wanting to see those rituals and stuff, but he's not thinking about that.
Oh my gosh, what if they did actually release the Newbery selection process and this is exactly the conversation the committee had?
They're gonna pull up our video and be like, we saw this video on YouTube, this stream, and they were talking about our process. I think we should reconsider.
I know sometimes I actually wonder like what if any of us like make it like as big authors and then like we like critiqued all these like famous works.
If any one of us makes it as a bit like famous author, you just have to private everything that they're
No,
on.
we will never. We will
Think
never
of the
get any awards.
headlines like canceled author Anne Sophie for having a war with
Neil
no,
Gaiman.
Neil
not Neil
Gaiman. For
Gaiman. Who else? What other
author
books
Anne
did we
Sophie
do?
calls Neil Gaiman a hobo.
I did not see that.
His fans are outraged.
Disheveled hobo. What a travesty.
Boo.
I think we've reached the part of the stream where like important things are not coming out of our mouths anymore. I think we've had our brain cells do their thing.
Well,
There
I
was
am
also
out of
kind of a thing-
banners. Oh,
There was
did you
also
so-
kind of a thing with clothes, particularly
Mm-hmm.
Bod's clothes. Like he
Oh, it's a
starts
good
off
point.
with the gray winding sheet, as it's called, and then
Yeah.
when he goes out into the town or the old town, he kind of makes sure to dress in like the stuff that's in the garden shed, and it's all too big for him, but he likes the big pockets and
Mm-hmm. And then when
Stuff like that.
Silas is going to school, he's like, "Okay, it's time for to have normal clothes now. If you're going to go to school, you got to dress normal."
yeah.
like
Then he
everyone else."
gets the more
he gets
proper
pants
clothes.
and yeah.
Yeah.
Silas also, for the Dance of the Macabre, make sure he has a really nice outfit for it.
Oh,
And
I'm so
Silas
just picturing Silas with his cape.
always, Silas always gets him clothes in gray. And at one point in the book, he says, I think it's actually for the Dance of the Macabre when he's like picking out his outfit. It's basically because it's camouflage, which is another way that Silas is
Oh,
really
yeah.
fucking cunning and sneaky with how he takes care and protects Bod.
Oh yeah.
Because he's just like, he dresses him in all gray. Like he wore a gray sheet, he wore gray jeans, gray shirts. And it's all because like gray is the predominant color in a graveyard. So
right.
it makes it the
A
easiest for him
gray
to,
yard.
which I felt was particularly
Violet.
interesting. He's got green sneakers. I can't help that.
To
But
match the
oh, grass though. Grass, because green would be for the grass. So that's actually even more
There you
That's
go.
even worse.
than like
Like there's all
Oh
the,
my
the
God,
brush
I
and
didn't
like the
care about the
ivy and
fact.
We should all
Okay.
cosplay as Bod.
Oh my god, I'm gonna go as Bod as Halloween this year.
I have
Just need a gray
green
sheet
green
and green
shoes.
shoes.
Great sheet. I already got one.
I'm also fantastic at standing in a corner and not speaking. So, you know.
I
I'm not-
love that for us.
Yeah, it's
Um,
my Halloween party I'm hosting. I'm just gonna be Bod and stay in the corner. It's like no one can see me.
No, you can make like snarky comments about bullies and no one will remember you. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Right.
But to be fair, well, there's been like a buzz and stuff that's fallen through before, but it is supposed to be coming in production for a TV show. The Great
It
Book.
is?
Yeah, it fell through
Like-
once before
Oh,
the rights.
Well,
So
that's probably.
But I
Makes you wonder,
think
is it
the
going to be like a
Neil
middle grade
Gaiman-
TV show?
I think it might have been Disney Plus that acquired it. I'm
Ah.
not sure.
It's probably because Neil Gaiman, as I said, I know more about
Neil
Neil
Gaiman.
himself than his thing. Yes, Neil Gaiman. Neil is like extremely protective of any adaptation rights because like when he first gave adaptation rights and like they just didn't adapt his things to his satisfactory.
He had
And, like,
never
good-
were adapted by the like BBC, like as like
Yeah.
a more of like a cheap TV like thing. I think back in the
Right.
day was his first
And-
adaptation.
And I don't remember whether or not he liked the Coraline adaptation, but like the only reason Good Omens got made as an adaptation is because Sir Terry Pratchett made Neil promise him
Yeah, I
that
heard
they
that.
would get it adapted and that he would be very involved in the adaptation. And then Sir Terry passed and Neil did it for his friend, but they did Good Omens so well. And the reception for Good Omens was so good.
But I think also
my very
Sandman was a
quickly, I don't
huge
care.
success.
Yes, but this was before Sandman.
Yeah, I know, but I mean just recently, like he's getting kind of a resume of like,
Yes.
and again, like I said,
So-
he's building that celebrity author status where also his name can almost sell things.
Especially
he-
considering he does
I
his own
think he
books,
already
narrates
had
his own
it.
books and stuff.
Yeah.
I think he already had that celebrity status before Good Omens, which is why he was able to have so much creative control with
Yeah,
Good
in
Omens
the
and
creative world, but I mean like for people like outside of the bookish world.
Yeah,
Like
outside
I
of
said to
reading
Anne
his
before we were
books.
live, that he played himself in an episode of The Simpsons. That's
Yeah.
pretty badass. That's like, how many people can say that? Well, probably
Yeah.
quite a few, but
I
still.
was gonna say with The Simpsons, they generally try to get the actual people to play themselves.
Yeah, but it's really cool. Like
I mean,
he
it's
wasn't
still
just
really
like
cool that he
playing
was
like
in The Simpsons.
yeah, that
so.
he was playing Neil Gaiman, playing himself. I was like, okay, that's like a level of I think we can
Like he's
put him
made
in
it. Yeah.
celebrity author.
That is the line.
Like they didn't change his name to somebody else. Like he's not
Yeah.
playing somebody. He's
Somebody
got
Owens,
not
himself.
somebody
nobody.
Gaiman.
Somebody Owens. No, his wife's name is Everybody.
Everybody. Oh my gosh, you guys.
That was the third child. Now what are they going to name the third
Oh,
child?
all the bots. Dad bot Owens.
Dad Bod. That's
Dad
the pet's
bod,
name.
mom
Dad
bod.
Bod. Dad Bod. That's the pet's
Robot.
name. Robot. Okay.
Yeah, okay, that's all I just wanted to say was about the adaptation. I actually don't think I have anything else to say. I do think it was a good Newbery pick.
I thought it was
Yeah.
good.
It does, again, maybe have a little bit like of that pretentious air of like being an adult book, but I do also think it works fine for kids. Like it clearly is a children's book.
I didn't feel anything pretentious about it myself.
Okay, but you guys have to understand, I read how many other Newbery books leading up to
It
this for
was
the
my
Readathon.
8th one for the Readathon.
Yeah, so
I
like
think it
compared to
was.
like this was definitely I think the most elevated prose other than the 2022 honor pick that I read, which was also
But elevated prose
Okay.
doesn't mean pretentious. I've read some pretentious shit.
okay, but like out of if I'm
Great
tier
pushback.
ranking all the books I read on a pretentious level, this one would be the top just out of what I read.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean it actually is pretentious.
No, but
because
just
it's
out of what I
comparative.
read, yeah.
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 Just in, yeah.
So
Sorry, I reserve pretentious for books that make me want to punch someone in the face.
no, but Neil is clearly oh my gosh, now that's gonna be the
Mr.
headline
Gaiman.
calls Neil Gaiman disheveled and pretentious.
Author tuber calls Neil Gaiman pretentious and
You know how after the live shows
Is
I
he
always
what's
change
wrong
the
with the
thumbnail
literary
to whatever we talked
It
about?
just needs to be the, no, it needs to be the Neil Gaiman.
Gaiman's face.
It needs to be the one from his website. The disheveled one from his website.
Neil,
With a
Neil
big
Gaiman
Newbery
posts.
award.
Neil Gaiman posts like a reaction video or something to
Have
Writing
I
Violet.
as somebody who was called pretentious as a child because I used big $5 words, I feel like Neil is just somebody with an expanded vocabulary who,
See, and I love that for kids.
yeah, who
You know,
doesn't
it's good for
dumb
kids,
it down.
yeah.
I
A
love
teacher's
it.
pulling me in. I gotta go.
Okay. Hi, Sam. Newbery criticism. What else was I gonna say? Oh, the other just criticism about the Newbery was about like old Newbery books still being in print and still being promoted, even though they're very outdated. And kind of the idea of like talking about like the Western literary canon, like still being pushed in school, some of like old classics, and some of the criticism on the Newbery is like the kids' version of that. Like, why are kids reading these crusty old books in school?
Yeah, but people are reading crusty old books in school any day of the week, not just related to
Yeah,
Newbery.
but I think, I do think there is a valid criticism there. But
Hi, Savian.
oh, we have a
Yeah, 'cause
Savian.
I'm
Hey,
trying to
Rusty.
think like if any of the books we had to read in school were like modern, and they weren't.
Because I read a few Newbery books in school, and they were all new-ish. The ones that were Newberries, like Hatchet, which I reread and it holds up. Because of Winn-Dixie, I reread and I didn't love it as much as an adult, but I think I also misremembered it.
Mm.
But it still, I think, holds up as a school book. So
I think
Yeah.
any school book is like made or broken by the teacher, though. Like what effort they put in and how they show the book and how they talk about the book and what they say about the book besides just reading the book.
I don't know. If
And
you go and look back at some of those, like 100 years is a long time.
that's true.
So, and some of the books just have other criticisms in them of, shitty stuff. So, like, I think it is a valid critique, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I'm sure you could go back on any list though and have.
But
find
it's
the same
also just the
criticism.
fact that the Newberries get pushed in schools, get pushed in libraries, and take space for modern books and other authors that could be,
Is there anything similar for middle grade, or is like Newbery the like top tier thing you want to be and like the top tier thing people look at?
It is, I think, the most prestigious. There's
Yeah, I would think so.
yeah.
Because I hadn't heard of it, but it might just be my little German thing.
The only Newbery book I remember reading in my school was On My Honor, which I think was from the 80s. Yeah, I read a few. Actually, I read quite a few. I read like A Year Down Yonder, Sounder, a few other ones.
I read
Bud
German
Not
books.
Buddy. I read quite a few Newbery books in school. So when I pulled up the list and read through them, I was like, oh crap, I read a lot of these. But there was like some crossover again with commercial successes as well, like Holes. Holes was a commercial success and a literary success.
Okay.
So, which maybe we'll cover that for the book club too. We'll see. The
Holes.
possibilities are endless.
Oh yeah.
Any other topic or any other thoughts on the Newbery in general or the book in general?
It was an amazing book, and
thought
I
it was
will
really
be
good.
reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Violet.
It's like-
Thanks for picking it out and having us enjoy it and
Yes.
everything. I
Well,
definitely
Michael,
enjoyed it.
since this was your introduction to Neil Gaiman, would you be interested in other of his works based off
Yeah.
of this?
Totally. Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, like, I don't think his writing style is 100% for me. I know so many people like love him and like
Mm-hmm.
stan him, and like I think the
Oh,
writing style is
people?
something.
There's so many of his books that I slogged through, and so like I'm not like 100%
Yeah.
fan of Gaiman, but like I'm a fan.
Well,
It takes
Like-
dedication though. Like I don't know, Good Omens, like the first chapter is like 50 pages, and I'm just like, sir, that is a choice.
That's what I couldn't get by at this for this book is like how long the freaking chapters were. It's like
wait,
this is a middle grade book, so your first chapter should not be 47 minutes long.
Yeah,
but
To
I
me, like break it down some.
my fascination with Neil Gaiman is very similar to my fascination I have with Stephen King, which I've talked about a lot during live streams. Again, it's that idea of a celebrity author. Like when you get to a point where you can almost publish whatever you want,
Mm-hmm.
it's that's the dream, isn't it? Isn't that the dream, to publish whatever you want,
Yeah.
to have that audience, that eyes are going to be on it, that it's going to get special edition covers, it's going to get turned into graphic novels, it's going to get film or
Yeah.
TV adaptations. Like
But it feels like Gaiman is still very sincere with what he publishes. Like he cares about everything, and there's so much detail. And if you look at how many books he's published over the span of his career, it's significantly less than other authors like Stephen King.
Yeah, well, to be fair, Gaiman is younger than Stephen King, and he did also work in comics and TV and other writing things as well.
How old is
Yeah.
Neil Gaiman?
61,
now?
according to Wikipedia.
Oh, really? Okay.
And how old is Stephen
I
King?
kind of didn't
He's older,
even know.
but not like that much.
I think he's in his 70s.
I'll Google that for you.
Is 75.
I wanted to Google that.
I'm faster.
Well, I knew his like career was popping in the 70s, so I thought like he had to be. Yeah. So it's like you can't really compare them. I think in some of their you can, but you know what I mean. Like Stephen has like a very wide range of books, but like just again, the idea.
Yeah, I feel like that 14 years does represent like a generation. Like I would say that Stephen King is like a generation older.
But I mean, if you're George R.R. Martin, you still haven't even wrote a book in that time, so who knows?
But he's also goes into the celebrity author pool. How many times has he been in a cartoon or memed or?
Yeah, it's complicated.
Well, and he makes a lot of his money from editing. Freaking putting his big ass name on people's
George R.R. Martin, you know, also was just a big name in the fantasy community alone before, and even just TV writing and sci-fi and the other things he did way before the TV show.
Oh yeah, HBO. But like the first Game of Thrones book came out in 95.
Yeah,
that's older than me.
We still don't have, like, I think it's supposed to be, I can't remember if it's 7 or 8 books. I think it's 8. And we still don't have the 6th one, and it's supposed to be, it was supposed to come out like 6 years ago.
I'll make excuses for George all day. Again, like
so will I, but it's like it's aggravating. It's like it just makes me wonder. It's like, you know, good and well, George, if you would have put that book out on time, the TV show wouldn't have been shit.
I don't know. I heard some behind the scenes things about like how his writing got like effed up, like it fucked with his head. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't also swear on my channel about like the show and people like it getting so many eyes on the story and people with fan theories picking it apart on such a public platform. Really messed with his creative process.
I can see that. I could see that.
Yeah. But also, like, he knows that whenever those books drop, people will be there to grab them. Like, he doesn't have to have that.
So before he just had, like, you know, the fan base, like the fantasy, the nerds, and then all of a sudden it was like
everybody,
random moms in the supermarket who were like,
I know, I got my grandma to read it.
Well, sorry, I went off topic. I can just promote. Not like anybody's like really still here watching other than Danny, I think. And lurkers, we love you.
Oh, can I promote my book club? We're doing some discussion tomorrow at 5 p.m.
That's true.
We're talking about Fun Family again, if you like that topic.
If you have any comments that were not made today.
But true. This was 100% Anne and Casey's doing that. We did have a last minute change in our train schedule, and we'll be now switching to read City of Bones for October.
Whoop whoop.
So I will be probably announcing that also on Instagram. And
I don't have anything to hold up, but I feel jealous.
And we will. Oh, nice!
Look, I'm holding it up.
I actually also have the same.
You like my
from the library.
My 5-week wait.
5 weeks. Sheesh.
Whoa! Send those people the link to the new Nostalgia Train Book Club YouTube channel. That was a seamless segue.
I started 7th in line for this book. And I'm like, that's the longest I've had to wait on a hold at this library. It's like, I'm not in a big town. It's like, how many freaking people are reading this book this month in this town?
Yeah. So, the Nostalgia Train does have a new YouTube channel. So in the future, I will be doing streams there. Oh, thank you, Anne.
Link.
But I'm not quite sure if I might still finish out the year on my channel. And then
I mean, there's only 2 more.
And then in January, start fresh on the new channel, but just to get a few subscribers there.
Yeah.
First.
Oh, I subscribe with like 5 accounts.
I think I might do just some reading streams and stuff over there just to, get a little hype building. Yeah. So we'll be taking obviously November off. So October, City of Bones, November, NaNoWriMo. We're all going to write our freaking novels that we can one day aspire to be Neil Gaiman. And then December we'll be back with
The
Steve's
Hobbit.
time to shine.
Oh, I
I
have to show y'all. I don't care. I'm walking inside. I'm so excited. Oh wait, I think I already showed y'all. I sent y'all the picture in the Discord of the magazine I got. I had a magazine cover. I don't care. I'm going to go inside. I'm going to show you.
No, I can find the picture on Discord.
Okay.
Y'all are about to get a tour of my house. Not really. I'm just going to the office.
Yeah. So yeah, we have stuff planned for the year. I'm excited actually for The Hobbit because
Violet, are you going to do another like questionnaire where people can like suggest books or vote on books for the next year for your planning?
I
yes.
am going to do something similar to that, where before I put them out on like my regular streams on my channel last year, and I think I had the issue where people coming to my writing streams who were not involved in the book club ended up voting.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty much going to keep it like to Discord only, or if anybody else doesn't use Discord and I know that they participate, have them, the people who actually have been involved, and
Yeah.
asking for their input, because again, that's part of the reason switching to City of Bones is because Shadow and Bone won on the poll, but when it came down to it, it didn't seem like anybody wanted to read it.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was kind of like I didn't want to force it, and the point was to read books we want to read, and
Makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
so
So
I mean, I have a lot of ideas for next year, but we'll see what happens.
Right.
Oh, fun ideas.
I got what I was going to show y'all. So I found this magazine at the store. It's the
Fancy.
Life magazine for the Lord of the Rings for the 20 years on film.
Oh shit.
And so it has a
sorry,
bunch of
fancy.
stuff. It has a bunch of stuff all in it. And we're reading The Hobbit. And look at this picture of the book.
Oh, I
Isn't
can't.
that beautiful?
Oh yeah.
I
I'm
love
using
that
it in my
cover.
journal. I'm gonna use it.
I'm
in my
gonna go
journal.
get my copy because I think my copy's really cute too.
I'm gonna use it in
Well,
my
the
journal.
thing is,
Like,
like,
it has a picture of like Peter Jackson on the back reading,
wow. Oh,
reading
he
the
could
same freaking copy. He looks
put
like
that
the
photo
Oh,
of
there you
him
go.
next to Neil Gaiman.
Look!
Yeah, but no, I'm so excited. I'm gonna use this, and then
Wait,
it
I should
has-
hold up mine too. December.
Here you go.
Woohoo.
Woo!
read The Hobbit.
And
We
Michael
need
is
to
as
do-
old as the Hobbit. Older.
But
We
even
need
at
to
the
do
end
a
of the
poll or
book-
something and figure out who's more disheveled, huh?
but it even
Oh my
has,
gosh,
like,
I should do it on the Instagram stories of Peter Jackson.
The Hobbit
You know,
trilogy. the
Peter
Merle,
Jackson
and-
or
so
Neil
cute.
Gaiman?
Yeah, so my journal is gonna be popping.
Casey, can you do me a favor and take a photo of that picture of Peter Jackson and put it in the Discord?
Yes, I
so that we
can.
could do a poll.
I can, because I think they may be equally disheveled.
Yeah, I love it.
It's yeah. But there's the two, Tolkien and Jackson.
Oh,
And then
Tolkien.
the real MVP.
Oh yeah, we love him.
Danny says, I have a box set of Lord of the Rings books that have movie covers since the Hobbit live movie haven't come out yet. I have another version of the Hobbit. That reminds me. Say that.
Me too. I had 3, and
Look at
then I gave one to Steek, and now Steek has one, and I still have 2.
Oh.
I forgot. I bought this Tolkien box set when I was home at a garage sale.
How
So
cute!
it has the trilogy plus the Hobbit. It's like,
Oh,
come into focus, stupid camera.
Oh.
oh.
Oh, that's cool.
I think
Yeah,
I've seen that cover
so-
somewhere.
I have 2 now. I'm like Stieg. I have a Hobbit collection.
Oh,
Wait, that
yes,
sounds like I have
definitely
actual
more than
Hobbits. Oh,
That would be funny though.
this train is going off the rails, guys.
Yeah, it's
That's
time to
a
end the live
sweet
stream.
box set there, though.
I know. I got it for $2.
What?
The spines are all broken. Like, clearly these
Who
were
cares?
well-read books too. Like,
That's almost fun though. Like if you see a book and like there's writing in it, or like you see how well someone read it and loved it. Like I think that's special. I like that.
Yeah, that Hobbit's dog-eared, it looks like.
yeah, it's been read. So I have actually another version of Fellowship of the Ring too. So it's like, ooh,
I don't
like a little
own
Tolkien
physical
collection.
copies. I read them on audio.
I want to get for when we do the Hobbit the Andy Serkis narration. I really want that
Which one do I have? I've got.
because I actually usually my copy is in German and I only have ever read this copy. So I actually never read it in English. So I'm really excited.
How dare?
I've got. Of course, I'm logged into my Audible instead of Jason's. Let's see. Who did I buy?
Yeah, there's several versions of The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, audiobook.
Oh, right.
I did the original one. I did the Rob Inglis one.
Do I have anything else to say? Does anybody have anything to promo or immortalize on the internet while we're here?
We love you, Neil
Riddle,
Gaiman.
Riddle
Thank
stream tomorrow as usual. Woot woot.
Woot woot.
Anne has
And
her
I will
show
I
tomorrow
will
as
get
well?
the stream
5 p.m. EST.
Oh yeah, subscribe to the new book club channel.
Yes, subscribe.
Casey has a journaling planner channel.
Ugh,
Casey does?
say that.
Casey is like doing a bod and like just fading right now. It's working, Casey. It's totally working.
No, Jason convinced me to unprivate all of my old planner videos.
Are you planning on doing more planner content?
I am. I just have to get a new mount because I broke it. So
Okay.
yeah, I would like to get a new mount, but yes, I would like to start doing some planner content. I don't know if that's gonna be just me videoing me doing it and then editing it and putting it up, or just doing like live journaling streams. I've also kind of thought about doing that and just hanging out with y'all because I know y'all just like hanging out. Don't know how like how Crystal does it. Just she lives her video gaming and stuff. So I thought that'd be cool if y'all wanted to do like a live journal stream or whatever. I thought about doing that too.
Yeah, that sounds like
I
it
think
would be
that sounds
chill.
really cool.
Yes, I popped Casey's channel in the chat too.
Oh Jesus.
Oh, so nice.
Go watch the cringe of all my old videos. The quality is crap on some of them because my phone was in the process of crashing.
Love that for you.
Yeah, it did crash.
Is that your villain origin story?
Yeah, that's when I stopped doing videos. I was like, "Fuck this! I'm not doing this." Oh, sorry, Violet.
No, it's I mean I already blew that a while ago.
Mike,
I'm
you're
not
the only
doing
one who
this
hasn't
anymore.
cast. Do it.
Huh?
Come on. You said you're the only one that hasn't cursed yet.
Huh?
Yeah, huh? Oh man.
Well,
Okay.
guys, stop it now. Okay, so Michael has a riddle stream tomorrow. Anne has a book club discussion tomorrow. I will be hosting the 3 Nuts on Monday. Bye.
Stand well back from platform edge. The next train, platform 5, does not stop here.